Vanessa Kline didn't plan on falling in love when she stopped for gelato on that hot June afternoon. She just wanted pistachio and a minute to herself before her interview. She glanced at her watch. 10 minutes. If the line moved fast, she'd still make it across Midtown in time. Her heels ached, her blouse clung to her back, and her resume was folded in her purse, slightly smudged from the iced coffee she spilled earlier. Typical. Still, she'd made it here and she was going to get that gelato. Behind her, someone stepped into line. She didn't look back. Not until she heard a deep, amused voice say, "That's a bold move. Pistachio at noon on a summer day." Vanessa turned, eyebrows raised. "Excuse me." The man behind her had on a navy suit that looked like it cost more than her rent. His dark hair was slicked back, not a strand out of place, and his ice-blue eyes were annoyingly smiling. "I'm just saying," he added, lifting his hands in mock surrender. "Most people go for something safer. Vanilla, strawberry, you're making a statement." She blinked. "It's gelato." "I'm not proposing marriage," he chuckled. "Well, now I'm curious, I'll get the same." She turned back around, trying to ignore the way her face heated. "Vanessa," he said from behind her. She glanced over her shoulder. "What? You dropped this?" He held out a folded paper, her resume. She snatched it from his hand, groaning. "Great, thanks. Job interview," she exhaled. "Yes, Midtown, in like." She checked her watch. 7 minutes, and I'm gonna be late, but I literally needed this gelato like I need air. He stepped forward as the line moved. "What's the job?" "Marketing assistant for a beauty startup. If I get it, I can finally stop waitressing and maybe buy groceries that don't come from a dollar store." He tilted his head. "What's your pitch?" She frowned. "My pitch? Yeah. Convince me why they should hire you." Vanessa narrowed her eyes. "Are you always this nosy with strangers in line, only when they're interesting?" She opened her mouth to respond, but the barista called out, "Next." Vanessa stepped up. "1 scoop pistachio, please." He stepped beside her. "Make it 2 and add a scoop of lemon for me." The barista glanced between them. "Together or separate?" Vanessa reached into her purse, but the man beat her to it, sliding a black card across the counter. "Together," he said with a slight grin. "My treat." She stared at him. "You don't have to, I know," he said, "but I want to." They took their gelato and stepped outside, the summer sun blazing down on the sidewalk. People rushed past them, taxis honked, and sirens blared faintly in the distance. But for a moment, everything felt oddly still. He leaned against the brick wall, licking his lemon gelato. "So, Vanessa Kline, you going to nail that interview or what?" She watched him for a second. "Why do you care?" He smiled. "Because I think you're going to do big things." She studied him, then finally gave in. "What's your name?" "Zayden Monroe." She repeated it slowly. "Zayden, huh, that's a name," he laughed. "Thanks, I think." She looked at her watch and cursed under her breath. "I have to run." He stood straighter. "Can I walk you there?" She laughed once. "No offense, but I just met you in a gelato line." "No offense taken." He handed her a small, pristine business card. "But if you ever want to skip the lines, call me." She took it, raising an eyebrow. "You own the gelato shop?" "No," he said. "But I own the building." Her brow furrowed, but she didn't have time to ask more. She turned and jogged down the sidewalk, calling out, "Thanks for the gelato, building owner." Zayden watched her disappear into the crowd, his smile lingering. 3 days later, Vanessa sat on her apartment fire escape, eating leftover pizza and staring at the business card she hadn't thrown away. Zayden Monroe. No title. Just a number and a logo that looked like a crown. She Googled him and promptly dropped her pizza slice. Zayden Monroe was a millionaire, founder of Monarch Ventures, real estate, tech investments, luxury brands. Forbes had him on some 30 under 30 list. His net worth was somewhere north of 30 million. She let out a stunned breath. What the hell? He could have been a jerk. He could have bragged, but he didn't. He just bought her gelato and asked about her job. Her phone rang. It was the beauty startup. She stared at it, heart-thumping, then answered. "Hello, hi, Vanessa. We were really impressed during the interview. We'd love to offer you the position," she gasped. "Wait, really?" "Yes, can you start Monday?" She nearly dropped the phone. "Yes, absolutely, thank you." When the call ended, she burst into laughter. Then she picked up Zayden's business card again. He said she'd do big things. Maybe he wasn't wrong. The next time she saw him, it was pure accident or fate. or something in between. She was walking out of her new office building, folder in hand, when a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The door opened and Zayden stepped out, speaking into an earpiece. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her. "Vanessa," she blinked. "Zayden," he pulled the earpiece out. "You work here?" She held up her folder. "Started Monday." His smile was slow this time. "I told you you'd get it." She shifted awkwardly. "I Googled you, by the way." His eyebrows rose. And she shrugged, trying not to smile. "You're rich." He stepped closer. "And you're interesting." She laughed. "Is that your go-to line?" "No," he said, voice low. "I don't usually chase women down in the street." Her heart thudded. "You want to get dinner?" he asked. "Real dinner. No gelato, no street corners, just you and me." She hesitated. "It's just dinner," he said softly, "but I'd really like to know you." She looked at him, this man in a custom suit, who once teased her about pistachio, who believed in her before she even landed the job. "Okay," she said. Dinner, and just like that, the city shifted around her. The noise faded, the traffic blurred. She didn't know it yet, but she just said yes to falling in love. Vanessa stepped into La Riviere, a restaurant so exclusive she'd only ever seen it from the street, half joking with friends that if they won the lottery, they'd go for dessert. Now she stood in its marble foyer, flanked by a glass chandelier and a hostess who greeted her by name before she could say a word. "Mr. Monroe is expecting you," the woman said with a practiced smile. "Right this way." Vanessa followed, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpeting, past tables adorned with flickering candles and patrons dressed like they were auditioning for a magazine spread. She adjusted the strap of her dress, suddenly hyper-aware of the zipper that wouldn't quite lie flat. Then she saw him. Zayden sat at a corner table near a wall of windows, his jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled up just enough to show a watch that gleamed under the candlelight. He looked up, and for a moment, the noise around her dulled. "You made it," he said as he stood, pulling out her chair. "You say that like there was a chance I wouldn't." "I've learned not to assume," he said, sitting again. "Besides, I didn't want to scare you off with something too over the top." She scanned the room. "This isn't over the top. I've held board meetings in here. Trust me, this is tame." The waiter arrived with 2 glasses of champagne before she could respond. She raised an eyebrow as the bubbles fizzed. "I didn't order that," she said. "I did." "Thought you might want to toast your first week." Her lips parted. "I didn't tell you when I started." "No, but I know the company. They always bring new hires in on Mondays." She tilted her head. "Do you make a habit of keeping tabs on places you don't work for?" Zayden leaned back. "Let's just say I like to know who's smart enough to hire someone like you." She rested her elbow on the table and studied him. "Is this a date or a job interview?" He grinned. "Why not both?" She took a sip of the champagne, letting it linger before she spoke. "So what's it like?" "What's what like?" "Having the kind of life where this," she gestured to the room, "is normal." He looked past her for a moment before answering. "You get used to people wanting something, money, access, a name to drop. It makes nights like this rare." She blinked. "You mean normal conversation?" "I mean someone looking me in the eyes because they want to, not because they're calculating how much I'm worth." She didn't know what to say to that. "So," he continued, cutting into the silence, "what do you like when you're not chasing job offers and defending your gelato choices?" "I don't chase job offers," she said. "I earn them, and I'll have you know pistachio is elite." He laughed under his breath. "Duly noted." "But you didn't answer the question." She shrugged. "Books, late-night walks. I used to draw, but that kind of fell off when rent became a more urgent concern than sketch pads." "What stopped you?" "Reality," she said simply. "Turns out talent doesn't pay bills." "At least not fast enough." He nodded slowly. "What would you draw?" "People, strangers. I'd sit in coffee shops and sketch whoever passed the window." "Why?" "Because people are interesting when they think no one's watching." The flicker in his expression made her pause. Like she'd touched a wire he hadn't expected her to see. "You ever feel like people only see what they want to see?" he asked quietly. "All the time." Their food arrived, but neither moved for it right away. He leaned forward. "What do people usually see when they look at you?" She didn't answer right away. Depends. If I'm in jeans, I'm invisible. If I'm in heels, I'm a threat. If I speak too confidently, I'm arrogant. If I hesitate, I'm weak. No matter what I do, it's wrong to someone. He sat back, watching her. That's not what I see. What do you see? He didn't blink. Someone who doesn't belong in the background. Heat curled in her stomach, unexpected and sharp. She picked up her fork, trying to gather herself. So what about you? What do people see when they look at you? Dollar signs, he said. Or headlines, sometimes both. But that's not really you. No, then who is? He hesitated, then said, someone who's tired of pretending he doesn't care. She looked down at her plate. That's heavy for a first dinner. I'm not great at small talk, she smiled, finally taking a bite. The food was exquisite, but it was the conversation that stayed with her. After dinner, he didn't call for a car. He walked beside her down Fifth Avenue, the street still alive with the hum of the city. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care. They passed storefronts she couldn't afford, mannequins dressed in clothes that cost more than her monthly salary. He stopped in front of one. Close your eyes. She raised a brow. Why? Because I want to give you something. She hesitated, but his expression was unreadable, so she obeyed. He stepped away briefly. She heard a door open, some hushed voices, and then a few footsteps returning. Open. She did, and found him holding a sketch pad, not just any sketch pad, the kind she used to save for, the kind she hadn't touched in years. Her throat tightened. How did you? I asked the store owner to keep one aside while we had dinner. You mentioned sketching. I thought maybe it was time to start again. She held it like it was made of glass. I didn't do anything to earn this, she said quietly. You don't have to, Zayden said. You deserve something just because. She stared at him, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. You scare me a little, she admitted. Why? Because I don't know what to do when someone actually sees me. He reached for her hand, his touch warm and sure. Then let me show you. The elevator opened to the 43rd floor of a building she'd never dared enter, let alone imagined seeing from the inside. Vanessa stepped into a space that felt more like an art gallery than an office, sleek, sharp lines, walls of glass, and a panoramic view of the skyline that made her breath catch. Welcome to Monarch Ventures, Zayden said beside her. I figured it was time you saw my world. You brought me here on a Saturday, she said carefully. That's either romantic or terrifying. I'll let you decide which by the time we leave. She followed him past an empty reception desk and into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. It overlooked the city like it belonged to him. I wanted you to see this because I don't invite people in lightly, he said, standing near the window. Not here. Vanessa folded her arms, watching him carefully. Why now? Because I trust you, he glanced at her. And because I want you to understand that what I do isn't just about money, it's about building something that lasts. She stepped closer to the window, gazing out. Do you ever stop moving? What do you mean? You run companies, you invest, you plan, you chase. Do you ever just sit still? Zayden leaned against the window frame. Not often. Stillness tends to bring thoughts I'd rather not entertain. She looked at him then, really looked. That sounds lonely. He didn't deny it. Instead, he motioned toward a covered easel at the far end of the room. I had something brought in. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. You're full of surprises today. He walked toward it, lifted the cloth, and revealed a framed sketch her own. One she'd done of a woman on a park bench, drawn years ago in a spiral notebook during one of her lunch breaks. She hadn't seen it in ages. She stepped forward slowly. Where did you get this? You left your old sketchbook in my car the night I gave you that new one. I had it restored. This one stood out. There's something about the way you captured her. It's like the drawing's breathing. Her hand hovered over the glass. I forgot about this. I didn't. He turned toward her. I wanted you to see what you're capable of when someone values your work. She swallowed, her throat tightening with something she refused to name. You didn't have to do all this, I know, but I wanted to. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unsaid things pressing between them. Then she turned to face him. What happened to you? His brow furrowed. What do you mean? You act like someone who's had something taken from him, something personal. Zayden's jaw tensed. My father died when I was 16, heart failure. He was the one who taught me everything about business, about discipline. But after he passed, everything I built came from needing to fill that silence. Vanessa stepped closer. Did it work for a while, until I realized success doesn't answer back. She reached for his hand without thinking. You don't have to keep building around the silence. He looked down at their hands, then back at her. You make the silence quieter. She didn't know what to say to that, not something clever, not something rehearsed, just the truth. Then let's see what happens if we stop running for a bit. Before he could respond, his assistant appeared in the doorway, clearly startled to find them there. Mr. Monroe, I'm sorry I didn't realize. It's fine, Zayden said quickly. What is it? There's an issue at the Westbrook site. They're requesting immediate input before Monday. He glanced at Vanessa, then back at the assistant. Give me 10 minutes. She nodded and left. Zayden turned to Vanessa. Will you stay? She hesitated. Are you asking me to wait like a guest or like someone who belongs here? His gaze didn't waver. Like someone I want to build a future with, her breath caught. I'll wait in the lobby, she said, voice softer now. But only because I want to see what that future might look like. He nodded once, grateful. There's a sculpture down there I think you'll like. As she walked back to the elevator, she glanced over her shoulder. He was still watching her, as if she were the only steady thing in a world constantly shifting beneath him. Outside, the clouds had started to gather, casting shadows over the city. But Vanessa felt none of it. She stood near the sculpture he'd mentioned, a twisted piece of metal that looked different from every angle. No plaque, no explanation, just like them, unfinished, unpolished, but undeniably real. When Zayden reappeared 20 minutes later, he didn't say a word. He just took her hand and led her outside, where the first drops of summer rain had begun to fall. She looked up. You forgot an umbrella. He looked at her instead. Maybe we don't need one. And then he kissed her. Right there, beneath the gray sky, in front of a building that touched the clouds. She didn't stop him. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't searching for something more. She'd already found it. Vanessa stood by the gallery window, brushing graphite from her fingertips. The afternoon sun slanted across the hardwood floor, catching flecks of charcoal on her knuckles. She'd been sketching for nearly an hour, the kind of focused, uninterrupted stretch she hadn't allowed herself in years. The paper beneath her hands held the beginnings of a cityscape, rooftops, shadows, and a figure leaning against a railing mid-turn. It wasn't finished, but she already recognized the shape of his shoulders. Behind her, the loft's front door unlocked with a soft click. She didn't turn. You're early, she said, pencil still in hand. Zayden's voice was warm. I couldn't wait. He crossed the room, stopping a few feet behind her. She didn't move, but she felt the shift in the air when he noticed the sketch. Is that me? It's the skyline, she replied, knowing exactly what he was asking. Looks like me. Maybe. He went quiet for a beat. Then, are you drawing what you see or what you remember? She set the pencil down. Memories last longer. Zayden stepped beside her, his jacket damp from the rain outside. You've been coming here often? Every Thursday, she said, brushing her palms against her jeans. The owner lets me use the space while it's between exhibits. Said it's good for the energy. He ran his thumb along the edge of the sketchpad. You've been building something too, she nodded. It feels different now, like I'm not just trying to prove something. Zayden turned toward her. I've been thinking about that. She tilted her head. About proving something? No, about what happens when you stop feeling like you have to. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper worn at the edges but still crisp. She took it and unfolded it slowly. It was her original resume, the one she dropped the day they met, but it wasn't smudged anymore. It had been framed behind glass, then removed, and the back now held a handwritten note. She read it aloud. You didn't need this to be worth something, but you had it anyway. She looked up at him. You kept this? I almost threw it out, but that felt wrong. It was the first thing of yours I ever held. Vanessa traced the edge of the frame with her thumb. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything yet, he said, stepping closer. Just listen. She waited. I've spent years building things that were impressive but hollow. Companies, penthouses, a name, but none of it meant anything until I had someone to share it with. He exhaled. You make the world feel sharp again, like colors look brighter, music sounds deeper. Even silence feels like something. She blinked rapidly. Zayden, I know we haven't done this for long, but I also know what it feels like when something's right. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not rushed, not rehearsed, just steady. Vanessa stared. I'm not asking you to marry me today," he interrupted. "I'm asking you to say yes to the idea of forever, however long it takes us to get there. No pressure, no deadline, just yes to whatever comes next." Her fingers trembled as he opened the box. Inside was a single ring, delicate, gold, and unlike anything she'd ever imagined. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't oversized, it was somehow exactly right. "I stopped for gelato that day because I needed a moment," she said, her voice quiet. "I didn't know I was about to meet the person who would become the moment." Zayden's throat moved as he swallowed. "Is that a yes?" she laughed, wiping a tear away. "It's a yes to all of it." He slid the ring onto her finger, his touch reverent. The moment settled around them like a hush before dawn. Later that evening, they stood on the rooftop of her building, takeout containers balanced on the ledge, jazz humming softly from a portable speaker nearby. No chandeliers, no guest lists. Just wind and light and the kind of peace that grows when nothing needs to be proven anymore. Vanessa leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "I don't think I ever believed in fate," she said. "You don't have to," Zayden replied. "You just have to believe in what's here." She looked down at her hand, the ring catching the last rays of sunlight, not as a promise of perfection, but as a symbol of something earned, something real. "You know," she said, "I almost didn't stop that day." He kissed the top of her head. "Then I would have had to chase you. You still would have found me." "I think I already had," he said. "I just didn't know it yet." And in the middle of the city that never slowed down, Vanessa Kline stood still, not lost, not waiting, but finally fully seen and loved. Vanessa stepped into the atrium of the Met, heels clicking softly against the marble as she adjusted the strap of the black silk dress hugging her frame. The museum was closed to the public tonight, but its halls sparkled with candlelight and the low hum of string instruments. Zayden had said only, "Wear something you love, I'll handle the rest." She hadn't asked questions. Not anymore. A staff member with a discreet earpiece greeted her and gestured toward the Temple of Dendur. As she walked through the echoing corridors, she passed towering sculptures and glass cases glowing under soft spotlights. It felt surreal being here after hours, dressed like she belonged, and not just blending in, but being led somewhere she was expected. As she stepped into the temple's chamber, she stopped. It had been transformed. Dozens of floating lanterns hovered in clear glass bowls, drifting across the reflecting pool. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and cedar. At the center, a long table draped in ivory linen held two place settings and a small arrangement of wildflowers. No servers, no crowd, just one man waiting. Zayden turned when he heard her enter, his navy suit crisp, his tie forgotten. He looked like he'd stepped out of some alternate universe where elegance came as naturally as breathing. "You did all this," she said, her voice low. "I asked for quiet," he replied, "and a place that felt like history." She stepped forward slowly. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." He nodded toward the table. "Then I hope you're hungry." They sat and ate by lantern light, grilled sea bass, roasted figs, and a dessert she couldn't pronounce but devoured anyway. When the plates were cleared, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. She stared at it. "What's this?" "A proposal." Her breath caught. "Not that kind," he added, amused. "Open it." Inside was a folded set of pages, hand-bound. Her own sketches stared back at her. Scenes of the city, of people in motion, of quiet moments. At the bottom of each page was a quote hers. Things she'd said in passing, things he'd remembered. "I've been working with a gallery downtown," he said. "They want to do a show, your show. These are just the opening pieces." Her fingers trembled as she held the pages. How long have you been planning this?" "Since I saw the way you looked at that blank wall in the studio, like it could become something." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. To the show, to the next step. To whatever comes after this. With me." She looked at him, the man who'd once teased her about pistachio gelato and now sat across from her, offering not just love, but belief. "I was never afraid of failing," she said. "I was afraid of succeeding and still feeling alone." He leaned forward, voice steady. "You'll never be alone again, not if you choose me." Tears welled in her eyes, but didn't fall. "Then yes." 1,000 times, yes. He reached across the table, took her hand, and kissed her palm. They didn't rush out of the museum. They wandered through the darkened wings, stopping to admire paintings and sculptures at their own pace. He told her stories about his childhood, how his father used to bring him here on rainy Saturdays, how he'd once gotten scolded for climbing onto a display because he thought it was a throne. She laughed until her cheeks hurt. When they finally stepped back into the night, the city was hushed, wrapped in that rare stillness that only comes after midnight. Months later, the gallery show opened with a line stretching down the block. Vanessa wore a cobalt blue dress that made her feel like she was stepping into her own skin for the first time. Zayden stood beside her, hand resting at the small of her back, ready to fade into the background so she could shine. People moved from sketch to sketch, murmuring about the emotion in each line, the way she captured movement and stillness all at once. She overheard someone ask how long she had been at it. She smiled and answered honestly, "I stopped. Then I started again when someone reminded me I could." That night, after the last guest left and the lights dimmed, Zayden led her through the empty gallery. "There's one more piece," he said. She followed him into a small adjoining room. On the wall hung a single drawing, a quiet, intimate portrait of two figures. Herself, mid-laugh, turned slightly toward the man beside her. Zayden, head bent, listening to her as if the world ended at her voice. It was the only one she hadn't drawn, signed in the corner, ZM. "You made this," she whispered. "I see you in ways I can't always say out loud," he said. "So I tried to draw it instead." She turned to him, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I love you," she said. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the thing he'd never known he'd needed. "I've loved you since Gelato," he murmured into her hair, "but I think I fell the second you challenged me in line." They didn't go home that night. They stayed in the gallery, wrapped in each other, surrounded by art and memory, and everything they had built from nothing but a chance encounter and a willingness to try. Years later, Vanessa stood in a sunlit kitchen with her sketchpad propped beside a vase of wildflowers. A toddler squealed somewhere down the hall, and Zayden's voice followed, laughing, patient, full of wonder. She smiled, running her hand across her growing belly. The ring on her finger caught the light. She was no longer proving herself. No longer afraid of disappearing into the noise of the world. She was seen. She was loved. And every morning she woke knowing that the life she had built alongside the man who had once bought her gelato on a whim was real, lasting, and entirely hers.